Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Steve Nyanumba on Nyanumba Codes, ready to take you on this video of role-based access control. Now, real talk, I'm going to just say this. I think developers all over the world have slept on this heavily. And the reason why I think so is everyone is talking about how to slap on a package like Spatie's Laravel permissions package and everything. So if I'm going to teach you about roles and permissions, I'm going to take you through not only how to implement it, but why I'm implementing it the way I would implement it, so that you can actually take that entirety of that logic and be able to base your applications off of different ways of implementing roles and permissions. Now, the reason why I say that there are different ways of implementing roles and permissions is because that's just the truth. Not every single application is going to be using roles and permissions exactly the same way. There are situations where you'll be using just a roles table. There'll be situations where you'll be using a roles and permissions table. There'll be situations where you're using a roles table and attaching permissions to them statically. And there are situations where you'll be using multiple authentication guards. Essentially, you just need to know the kind of use case that you'll need for your application or whatever it is that you're building. And now I just want to show you what it is that we will be doing in terms of trying to implement all kinds of role-based access control inside one application. So, in this video, I'm just going to break it down properly, not like most videos that people are talking about roles and permissions very vaguely, and not just what to do, but the why. Because if you do not understand the why, then you're going to continue building broken access systems that nobody actually wants to maintain. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's actually get down into it. When we're talking about roles and permissions, we're centering everything around the users table. What we have here in the users table is just simply the name, the email, and the password. That's just as simple as it is for all kinds of users. The simplest way and the simplest form to be able to create roles and permissions is by either putting in here a Boolean. Let's say, for example, you want two different kinds of roles. You want an administrator and you want non-administrators. So you can come in here definitely and just put a Boolean, and then we'll come in here and say is admin. By default it's false, such that if any time you create this particular user, right, you create a user and try and implement the user's features, then they're going to be able to, access things to do with either is admin or is not admin, depending on how you set up your system. Now, let me just stop talking a bit gibberishly, and let me explain why I have this is admin and how I'm going to make it work for me. So we have this is admin column. In order for us to, let's say, for example, only be able to access certain routes over here using this is admin, we're going to be creating middleware, okay? So once I've already set this up in the users table is admin, then inside here, okay, I'm going to come in here and do, let's say, an admin middleware, okay? And this is essentially what's going to happen. So given that we have the admin middleware over here, what we're going to do is we're going to create it as well. So just do PHP artisan make middleware, and then we'll say admin. So this is admin middleware, and then we'll go to app http middleware and admin, and we'll come in here and we'll just say if the authenticated user, so auth is coming in from Illuminate support for SODs, we'll come in here and collect the user, and then we'll say is admin, okay? So now it checks if the authenticated user is an admin. If they are, then return the next request, and if they are not, then abort, okay? So we'll just do an abort for 3 unauthorized actions. So that essentially now works like that. So how do we go about, implementing this here? How does it fare on? Well, if we go to the register, we'll come in here and register our user with the password that is known, create the account, and now we have our dashboard. But if we click on settings, well, you see target class admin does not exist, and the reason why that doesn't exist, you'll definitely see that we have our middleware admin over here, but it's not registered. To register the middleware that we've created over here, we need to go to our Bootstrap, we go to app, and then over here with middleware is where we're going to implement it. So we'll just come in here and just do middleware, and then we'll do alias, and then we'll do an array. We'll call for admin, and we'll call the middleware from the admin, the middleware admin from the folder right here. So that's how we do it. And then we close off this with a semicolon, and that's how we push on forward. So now this is going to work. If we come in here and refresh this, you definitely see our 4.3 unauthorized action, because this user is not an administrator. But what if we said, okay, well, let's actually create this user and make them an administrator? In such a situation, I would probably even do it like this. I would come in here, go to my seeders, okay? And then I'll come in here, you can see the user factory create, then there's the name, there's the email. I'll come in here and just do is admin true, and then we'll do a password, bcrypt password, which is fine. So if I come in here and refresh the whole thing with seeding, and I refresh this as well, we can log in with test user at example.com, and then we have our password as password, and we go in. It should be test at example.com, sorry, not test user. So we'll log in, and we'll definitely see that we are able to go on straight. So we tried to access the settings page, and now you can see we can access the settings page, right? But that's only because this person is an admin. It's actually basing the check off of whatever it is that we've already built inside our system. Okay, so given that that's the situation, you definitely see that we have our admin middleware set up over here to access the settings, such that if I decided that I'll go ahead and log out and then register a new user, then I will go ahead and just register this new user with a new password. And once I register, it logs in the user. But now you see I can't access settings because it's unauthorized for me, because this person is not an admin. So that's generally how the base level of role-based access control works. Now, there are situations where, like, as much as we have two different kinds of users, we might want to create users dynamically. Okay, we want to create roles dynamically, sorry. So if we want to create roles dynamically, it means that there has to be a static level that links up to the roles themselves. And this is where a roles table would come in. If I was to create that roles table, this is what I would do. I'll come in here into my terminal, and I'll do PHP artisan make model, and we'll call it the role, and we'll do a -m right there. Okay, so now we've created the roles table. Given that we've created the roles table like that, then essentially we don't need this over here. Okay, we won't need this over here. And what we will do after the roles table is going to be, first of all, we have to do the name of the role. Okay, and once we do the name of the role, this is what we're gonna do. If we push on forward to try and link the roles to the users, there's two ways we can go about it. One is to create a migration that adds a constraint to the users table. So I'll just call it add constraints to users table. Okay, so this constraint in particular, given that this is just a level-headed migration, given that this constraint that's supposed to be added into the users table is supposed to be the role ID. So I'll just come in here and just do table foreign ID, role ID. I'll leave it nullable because there's situations where you're creating the user and there are no roles attached to that particular user. Okay, and maybe you could even have a default role that is created in the system, which is not a big problem whatsoever. But given that we can make it nullable, we can constrain it, and then we do cascade on delete. In fact, we can just do null on delete since it's nullable. Okay, so given that the role ID, given the role is going to be deleted, then this one is left blank, but the user still remains. Now, how do we go about also linking these roles to the system itself, all right? And that's where permissions comes in, all right? So we'll come in here and do a column over here called JSON, all right? And then we'll call it permissions. And now these permissions are nullable as well, because you might create a role and make it nullable as well. Make a role and actually make it not have any permissions whatsoever, such that you can attach a role to somebody. They know that they have this particular role, but there's no permissions that allows them to do anything in the system. So, given that that's the situation, now we can actually migrate this and everything is working fine. The only thing that I've not done here is to drop this column inside the rollback. So I'll just come in here and just do that. So I'll do table, drop foreign. So I'll just do drop foreign ID, or I'll just do drop constraint foreign ID, and then I'll call the role ID just like that. And yeah, that's how we go about that. So in terms of migrating this, I'll just come in here and do PAM, which is PHP AutoSun migrate. And you can definitely see we have create roles and adding the constraints to the users table. So that generally works. So how do we then go about ensuring that this middleware is going to handle that? Inside our web routes, we're going to get rid of the admin middleware, and then we're going to now start checking the permissions, okay? I'll come in here and say permission, manage settings. I'll create that as a permission, and then on top of that, we're going to seed a few things over here. There's the roles that we're going to be seeding actually. So I'll just come in here and do role, and we'll maybe say create, or we'll just do db like this, db table roles insert, and then we'll come in here and do admin, and we add the permissions that are supposed to be there. So we could add the permissions of, let's say, manage settings. And this is where, at this point is where things are supposed to actually even be static, all right? So we'll say this admin over here is a role, and then we have the permission over here to manage settings, and then we have the user permissions, which has no particular role whatsoever for managing the settings. Now, we'll come in here inside the users factory over here, once we've created that stuff, and then upon creation of this user, we can come in here and do the role ID being equal to 1, which is this first role over here. So given that that's the situation now, we have our user that has the role ID that manages the settings, and then we have common users that wouldn't have anything. In fact, we could even just get rid of this and have this user not have a role. Now, inside the middleware, given that we are dealing with permissions now, we're going to come in here and change things up a little bit. Now, this middleware may not change the name, but you could rename it however you want to rename it. In fact, I think I'll just come in here and just create a new one. PHP AutoSun make middleware. And we'll call it check permission. So this middleware is what's supposed to happen here is it's supposed to check the permission. In this one, we're not going to do exactly what we did here. We're going to do it somewhat differently. The first thing is we're going to have to add a permission. So this permission comes in over here. And what is going to happen is we're going to do an if statement. And this if statement checks if the user, I'm going to run a function inside the user's model. So if the request user has a permission that is related to the permission that is over here, that's coming in through here, then we return the next request. Otherwise, we abort, all right, and we say unauthorized action. So it's almost the same as this, except now we're putting an actual permission in play. Okay, and in order for that to happen, now you can see that we have a permission that is coming in through the web routes over here. So we have permission manage settings. The only way we just need to register that middleware is by coming in here. I'll duplicate this and then change this to permission, and then we'll come in here and just change this to check permission. And that's all I'm going to do for that. And for that to work, I mean, that now at this point, at this particular point, everything is going to be working exactly the way we wanted it to work. So I'm just going to come in here and do PHP auto migrate fresh with seeding. We definitely have some errors a little bit. So you can see the table users has no column named is admin, and that is the error that I needed to get rid of. So you can see this is admin true is no longer a column here. So I'm just going to come in here and delete it and then do the same thing again. And now once we've done that, we can come in here and refresh this and log in as the test user again. So once we log in, we can access the settings page, but you can see that we have this has permission function that has not been defined. So what we're going to do here is define it inside the user's model. And upon defining it in the user's model, actually I'll just go ahead and put it in here. So I'll do public function, and then we'll say has permission. And this has permission passes in a permission. And it's going to return a Boolean value. Okay, so we're just going to come in here and check if this roles are also going to be there. So I'm just going to come in here and do this. There's a function, first of all, that we needed to create that creates the relationship between the user and the role, which is public function role, and this belongs to role, which is fine. Okay, and on the role side, this has many users, right? So the has permission now checks the permissions within the role area. If the role, so let's just put it like this here. If this role, so if this user has a role, then we're going to decode the roles and make it an associative array. Okay, actually, let's just reverse all that. So we're going to, put an associative array inside the roles, and we're going to check if the permission that we have in question is inside these permissions. All right, and then if that is the case, then we return false. If it's not, if this is not the case, then we return false. There's a way that we could do this in one line. Okay, if this role is present, actually, you know what, the way this is run is okay. I think this is just perfect, and yeah, I think we're just going to move on forward with this. So given that that's the situation, now I'm going to refresh this, and we can definitely see that we can access the settings right there. But if we go back to logging out and register the new user, we'll register this new user, but this user cannot access settings because the permissions are not enlisted inside this user's accessibilities. Okay, so we'll just go back, and log out, and yeah, that's how that works. So given that now we've already declared certain situations inside our seeders right here, I need to talk about why it is that we have this value over here. In fact, we're going to change this up and make it a static value. Now, the reason why we're doing this as a static value, just the same way we did with the initial way of declaring roles inside the users table, is because at the end of it all, you're still going to have to link your roles back to the system's functionalities. You cannot declare permissions that are not existing in the system. Okay, so in light of this, in making this aware to ourselves, we need to come in here and do, like, let's say, for example, a config. All right. We'll do a config file, and then we'll call the config file permissions. Okay. So we'll do the config file and call the config file permissions. Inside this config file, the config folder over here, I'm just going to create the permissions.php. And over here, I'm just going to open my PHP tag, and I'm going to return the permissions themselves. Okay. So we have manage users, which is a permission on its own. We have the manage settings, we have manage roles, manage settings, manage permissions, manage appearances, manage profiles. So all of these things are going to be dependent. All right, all of these things are going to be dependent on our capabilities as, you know, declared by the roles. So let's say, for example, now we have these manage users, manage roles, manage settings. We know that we have this in our system, and we're going to come in here and declare them inside our web routes. And I'm hoping that makes sense, because that's as simple as I can mention it. That's the simplest way that I can go ahead and describe all these things for you. So you can definitely come in here, you do permission manage settings, and then over here, you come in here and just do wrap this inside a middleware of, you know, as much as we have auth verified, we can also do permission access dashboard, right? And that generally does it, right? If we come in here, we log in as the test user, for example, we can definitely see that we can't access the dashboard, but we can try as much as we can to do the settings profile, because this user has that permission to access the settings. So you can definitely see that all these items are all circumstantial, but they're all going to, you know, be loyal to the fault of we have permissions, these permissions inside the system. But let's say you want to create a permissions table, which I will not recommend. Most people want to create the permissions table and make it as dynamic as possible. Let's say you create a permissions table, and then you can create, read, update, and delete permissions. Now imagine that in the use case of a system like this, where, you know, you're creating permissions, but there's nothing linking those permissions to the actual features that are within the system. Okay, so if you're going to create a permissions table, be able to create, like, let's say, for example, you have a permissions table, then create, maybe say, features.php. Okay, and then from there you just put in your features, the features of this particular application, right? And then link those features back to the web routes by doing, like, let's say, the features and creating the middleware as well, and all those different things. That's how I'd work it out. But there's no real need to actually go ahead and do that. There's no real need. What you can do, yeah, let's say you have this permission, manage settings, or access dashboard. We could also do it with features. Right? We could also do it with features and link it through the permissions table, and link those permissions table back to the roles table. And then, you know, you can even do a many-to-many relationship between roles and users. It varies, okay? The way you're going to work it out, it varies. But this is how I would go about it when I'm doing the roles and one users table and all those different things. But what happens if you have multiple authentication cards? Let's say, for example, yeah, you have this one login area that we have over here. Okay, we go back to logout, and we have this one login area. This is logging in as, let's say, an admin or a user of the system or somebody, right? If I was to draw up a full-on description, let's say we have one application. Let's go to our whiteboard. So we have one application right here, okay? We have these kinds of users that access the main functionalities of the application, right? We have our admins and all that, right? So we have admins, we have users, we have people of circumstantial use in the application, certain stake. But now we're talking about our esports application. Now we're going to have gamers and clients, right? We have gamers, we have moderators, we have, clients, and all those different kinds of users. So this is one users table, this is another users table, okay? All inside this application. Now, these ones are going to be able to log in on their own different levels. So let's say, for example, these guys, in order for them to access the system, they have to log in and register. And they're also going to have all those other different things like the two-factor authentication and all those different things. So all this is linked to here. Okay? But imagine a situation where we also having gamers being able to access this through the same login and registration. It's not always going to be ideal, okay? It's not always going to be ideal because these gamers can actually guess, from this point, can actually guess the admins, logins, okay? They can actually be able to guess the admins' logins, and then they'll be able to access from the point of the admins or from the point of the users through the same login system. So what essentially it's aimed to do in most systems is we're going to come in here and we're going to duplicate this. So I would come in here, I'll duplicate it over here. And now this one will definitely be linked to this one. So we have this login and register only for the gamers, moderators, and clients, and admins cannot log in through this login situation. So let's say the admins have their own login credentials. If they try and put it inside this login and registration, it refuses. Likewise, for the gamers, if they try to put it inside this login and registration, it refuses because they're trying to log in from the admin points and the admins are trying to log in from the gamers points, which doesn't work. So this is going to be the users table. This is going to be another table called the clients table. How do we create multiple authentication guards, if one person may ask? Well, I'm going to do it like this. Just follow my steps, right? I'm going to come in here and create a model, PHP artisan make model, and we're going to call it the clients model. So it's going to be client-m, and we've created that, and we've created the migration as well. Let's say that it's just going to be like for like to the users table. Okay, so I'm just going to copy everything inside the users table here and paste it inside the clients table right here. Now we have our name, we have our email, we have our password. That's for the users, the clients table only. So we'll save that, and then we'll go ahead to the models that we've created. Now watch this. Inside our role model extends model, which is coming in from this eloquent model right here. But inside our users, it's extending the authenticatable, which is coming in from Illuminate Foundation auth user. So I'm just going to copy this, okay, paste it inside here. And just like that, we have the extension authenticatable. So that is the kind of extension that we're going to be using right there. So the client extends authenticatable just like the user does. Now, I'm going to also copy most of all these different things over here, the factories, the casts, and the initials and all that stuff. Okay. And then we paste it inside here and we import all this. Has factory is going to be imported and notifiable is also going to be imported. So that's how we go about that generally. So you can see there's similarities between this and this. This and also, let me get rid of this features column right there. So we have this users table have it looking almost exactly as the client's table right there. So what's going to happen in this position? And of course, we just need to import this str from Illuminate support, and that's done. So what's going to happen in this position from here? Well, what we'll do in this position is we're going to now create the multiple authentication guards through our config auth over here. Okay. Now we'll go to our config auth over here, and we will duplicate the web guard. We'll create client over here, and then we'll need to use the provider as clients. Now this provider has not been created yet, and the provider is supposed to be created right here. So we have to duplicate this, and then we'll just come in here and say clients. And the model is going to be coming in from app models clients. Okay. So now once that is done, we have indeed now created the multiple authentication guards. Okay. Even passwords. If we wanted to create our passwords for the clients, we'll just come in here and do clients, and the provider will be clients. And then the table will be, you know, we have passwords, there's the password reset tokens, all those different things. But we don't need this either. We just need these two. We just need the providers, and we also need the guards. So that's how you create multiple authentication guards. And how to check these multiple authentication guards. You know, by default, we already have our normal authentication having different levels of middleware. Like you see over here, we have middleware guest and we have middleware auth. So this middleware guest checks if this user is logged in. If they are logged in, then it redirects away from these routes. It's not going to be able to access these routes. If they're not logged in, that's when they're able to access these routes. But auth checks if this user is authenticated, and if they're not, then it redirects them back to the guest routes. How are we going to do that with the clients? Well, we are just generally going to duplicate this. Okay, we'll duplicate it like so, and then we'll go ahead and do guest.client as the middleware over here, and over here the middleware will be auth.client, okay, which will have to register in the long run. And then the next thing that we're going to do here is, given that we've created this for the client, we're going to actually add the name and the prefix for all this. So the name is going to be client dot, and then there's going to be a prefix, which is going to be client. So that's the prefix, and this is the name as well. So what's going to happen here is that, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside this next one over here. So what's going to happen here is, with this name, actually let's do this. We'll just do PHP artisan route list to see how that has come into effect. So you'll see that we have our client.password.confirm, client.password.request, client.login, client.register, client password reset, client verification notice, all those different things, right? On top of which, we also have our password confirm, our dashboard. We also have our other routes that are being declared over here, okay? So we have our route over here. So verification notice is here, verification verify, password confirm. All these routes are also going to exist together with these other routes that are over here. So if you look closely, like we have client confirm password, client login, client register, and all those different things. But we also have login, logout, register, reset password, and all those other routes are going to be existing for these other users. So that's going to be one way to deal with it. The next way to deal with it, in fact, one thing that I've not done is these routes are also going to do, we're also going to change these routes a little bit. So we have auth login, okay? So instead of auth login, we're going to change this to client login. Instead of auth register, in fact, we're just going to do that for these ones, this one. Instead of auth register, we're going to do client register. Auth forgot password and auth reset password, we're just doing client instead. And then we move on to these ones, auth verify email and auth confirm password. These ones are going to be client verify email and client confirm password. And yeah, that's how we're going to go about that. So essentially, this is what's going to happen. We're going to now also go to our resources. We're going to go to our views, our Livewire and auth over here. And we're going to come in here and copy this auth, paste it inside Livewire again. And then we're going to come in and edit this to be client. And just like that, we've generally just changed every single scope. The only thing that we need to change is, like, let's say, for example, we go to login. Instead of logging in using the authentication guard that is by default, we're going to change this to look for the guard. And by default, it's going to use the users. So we don't need to change anything inside auth over here. But we'll change over here. We'll check the auth guard client. And then now we attempt with this email and the password and all those different things. And that's the only thing we're changing at that point. So we have to copy this. We'll go to register as well. Okay. And we'll come in here and we'll, in order for us to create this new user, all right, over here is what we're going to change again. So we're going to come in here and do client instead of user. So this area over here, wherever it is that we've used user, we're going to change it to client. And now I think that's everything. And that's the only thing that we're going to be doing. So we have the client registration and we have the client login, and they're all working the way they're supposed to be working. So we have this auth guard client as well. We log in with this user's credentials like that. So yeah, that's essentially how we're going to go about that. And we'll probably even have a client dashboard. All those different things are going to be working just like that. So let's say we try and log in through this one over here. So we're going to just change this to log into your gamer's account. Okay. And now once we have that, we have a way to go to client login. And you can see target class guest client does not exist. So now we need to create our middleware. So at this point, I'm just going to close all, and then we're going to open our terminal over here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do PHP artisan make middleware. And this middleware, there's supposed to be two of them. There's the redirect if authenticated client, all right? And then we're also going to create one called authenticate clients. Authenticate clients. So redirect if authenticated client is going to check if this user is authenticated. If they're not, then they are going to go back to the, if they are authenticated, then they're going to be redirected to the dashboard. But over here on authenticate client, it's going to redirect this user back to the login or the registration or whatever it is that they're going to be able to do. So this one is supposed to link to the guest client, and this one is supposed to link to the auth client. So this is how we're going to register them. We're just going to go back to our Bootstrap app. Okay. And then what we're going to do here is, given that we have now our admin class over here, I'm just going to delete it, and then we're going to have auth.client over here, and it's going to come in and take the authenticate client. So auth client is supposed to take the redirect if authenticated client, and then the guest client is supposed to be guests.client. is redirect if not authenticated, or we're just going to come in here and say authenticate client. So now this is how we're going to set it up. If we go to our HTTP middleware, and now we start by the authenticate client, which checks if this user is not authenticated. So it's going to come in here if the user, all right, so if I'm going to come in here and do auth guard client check, okay, if the authenticated user is a client and is authenticated, and I'm just going to come in here and put it inside eliminate support facades auth. I don't know why it keeps on doing that. So if the authenticated user is a client and he's authenticated, then we have to return redirect, okay? And we're going to redirect this person to the client's dashboard, right? Otherwise, just take us to the next request. So that's how we're going to work this thing out in particular, okay? But now when we're doing it in the opposite manner, redirect if authenticated, okay? So we're redirecting this user back to the login routes if they're not authenticated. So we're just going to come in here and do the not, if not authenticated, then we're going to return this to the client login, okay? So normally I would do this, redirect, and then I'll come in here and use route, and then we'll do client login, like that. So essentially, if that works, then I'm just going to come in here and refresh this. And you can definitely see I can access the login page. If I want to access the dashboard, then I'll have to also, like let's say for example, client dashboard, okay? Let's say now I create that client's dashboard inside my web routes. So I'll come in here and I will create this route view, and then I'll do URI is client dashboard, and the middleware is auth.client, okay? And then I'm going to get rid of the permission over here, and then the name is client.dashboard, okay? Now I'll go back to my middleware just to make things a little bit more seamless. I like to use routes instead of actual URIs, and I will keep it like that. So if I create it like this, and then I try to access that client's dashboard, because the view is now still the dashboard, okay, it's still this one. If I try and access this, it's going to redirect me back to the login. If I try to now go ahead and let's say, for example, I use the login that is supposed to be present, it's going to refuse. You can see no such table clients. It's actually checking for the client's table. So we've not migrated, which is one thing. So we need to migrate the client's table. But now once we've done that, when we try to log in, you can see these credentials do not match our records, because it's checking the client's table for this user. But if we go back to login, okay, if we go back to login, then we try the same user, it's going to work. But it's just going to take us to the dashboard where we have unauthorized action. If I get rid of this permission, all right, if I get rid of this permission and let it work as follows, then we're going to be able to access the dashboard. So that in particular is all come full circle. Now, if we try again to do a client dashboard, now it's going to take us to the login page regardless of whether or not we've logged in as the different user over here. The reason why that is because we've not logged in as the client. So if you see that, you can definitely see that that's going to work like that. If we go to the client register, this is where we're going to register our new client. So here is where I would probably put in the same details as the previous user, that we created. And when we create, we now are redirected to a dashboard. So if we come in here, this is the dashboard of the test user. You can see that this is the test user. But if we try to get to client stroke dashboard, you can definitely see we can access the client stroke dashboard, but we need to access this client dashboard as the user that has logged in. If I log this one out and then try client dashboard again, we'll try client dashboard again. We'll do client login, and we'll try and log in as that user that we created. And when we log in, you can see it's taking us to log into the account. But if we try client stroke dashboard, it should give us access to the client's dashboard, which is fine. It's given us access. The only thing is that this over here has not been made into the client's dashboard properly. So we could actually even just duplicate this. We can also create another file over here. We just say client dashboard .blade.php, and then we'll say we'll create this HTML, and then we'll say maybe put a H1 over here and say client's dashboard, right? And in order for us to access now the client's dashboard, we'll just come in and do client's dashboard, just like that. So now once we refresh this, we have the client's dashboard right there. Okay. That's essentially how we'll work it out, and you can add whatever it is that you want to add. You can put any kind of, all those kinds of themes that you want to add. But now we know that we can actually create two separate applications within the same code base. So that's how we are going to work it out generally, and that is how multiple authentication gods are done. So we've gone over two levels of working through role-based access control. We've done the roles, we've done roles with permissions, and now we've done multiple authentication gods. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything more that you need to try as much as you can to implement, we will be doing a live stream very soon. Please do indeed come and join us on that live stream as we try as much as we can to clarify everything that is on this. For all those guys who are subscribed, thank you so much. We've hit 1,300 subscribers recently, and we thank you so much for all the support that I've been getting on this channel, and all the positive feedback on the tutorials and the videos that we've been doing. So we thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for all that you guys have been able to do for this channel and the support that has gone along the way. So if you guys found this very helpful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, in the next video, we'll be tackling more authentic, more advanced features on the basis of how to build certain applications. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I will be seeing you guys pretty soon. Please do indeed take care, and as always, may God bless you all.